Curtis A reached out to me, said make a theme song for my show. Said alright, just give me all the details, man. And my homie says he don't know. Well, if you're gonna pay me big bucks, cause I might should have something to say. He said, you know what I bring, I'm the customizing king, nothing else matters anyway. So is he gonna have guests? I don't know. Is he gonna go live? I don't know. What time will it be? What will you see? I'm pretty much in the dark, but I can guarantee he'll be customizing action figures, getting paint all on his fingers. It's art by Akerman. It's art by Akerman. Tips and tricks and conversation, sharing his gift with every nation. It's art by Akerman. Art by Akerman. You best get ready, cause now it's time for Art by Akerman.
All right, so we are back for another What's on My Desk. A little bit more with this Doomsday. So last week I finished up the Doomsday repaint that I was doing of this McFarlane figure. And when I did that, some folks had said that they would like to have seen kind of what led up to that live one that I did. So, I had the original McFarlane figure, which the sculpt is really nice, but I really wanted it to look more something like this statue, something, where the paint apps just, really popped a little bit more. Because the sculptural detail is there on this McFarlane figure. It's just the paint apps are not great. So I separated all the parts, got them into little either alligator clips or on sticks, and then I went to my airbrush station. So here you see I've got that head. I put some blue tack in the eyes because I really did like the paint job they did on the eyes. The rest of it, not so much. And I'm going to start here by just painting a black all over this, doing a primer. So this is the Vallejo black primer. There is a regular black and then a gloss black. I'm using the regular here. So I'm putting some into my airbrush, and then I will add a few drops of flow improver as well as a few drops of thinner. And this, how much you're adding here kind of depends on what paint you're using, and what you're planning on doing with the airbrush. So for instance, if I wanted a thinner line, if I wanted something really tight and crisp for details, I would probably lower the PSI. I might, want to make sure that it's not too thin so it starts spider webbing out. So you just kind of got to play with this, and it also depends on the type of paint that you're using, whether it starts out as thinner or thick. So, what I'll do is I'll, get the thinner flow improver and paint in there to the point where I think I like it. I'll bubble it up just to mix it a bit, and then I will practice spray it on a paper towel like you see here. And, it is pretty wide, but that's good because I'm trying to get full coverage. So, and then here I'm going to go into the little fast motion because as I'm doing the black, I'm covering up most of it as I'm painting it, so it's kind of hard because my hand's in the way. But yeah, basically I'm just taking all the pieces and I'm covering over it with the black. And then once that's done, I'll go through and start doing some of the zenithal highlighting, and we'll talk about that as we go. But this is just continuously just, doing it black. When I run out of paint, fill it up with some more paint, test it on a paper towel again, and just keep going. And so I'm just going through all the parts here. And then we'll talk about, as I move from one color to the other, kind of how I transition and clean the airbrush there. But so just finishing up here, going through all of it. I didn't notice at this point that belt actually comes off of the shorts. That would have been good to pull off at this point as I'm priming this, but I don't catch that till later. So yeah, and some of these pieces are softer. Some of them are not as soft as far as the plastic. So I ended up like the shorts and a couple other pieces where they were a little bit tacky when I was done. So I ended up hitting that with a Mr. Super Clear matte. So that just kind of brought down that tackiness a little bit. So here I've switched to a white, and I'm getting ready to do that zenithal priming. So once again, it's just a Vallejo white primer. And for this, I'm going to try to spray in the direction that I would expect light to hit. So for like the head and the torso, it's going to really just be from the top down. But as I go into like the arms and things like that, I got to try to figure out how I'm going to have this thing posed. And it's not going to make a huge difference, but like for instance, let's say he was throwing a punch, right? Well, I would want the light coming down from the top of the hand, rather than like if his arms were down at his side, it would be coming more from like the wrist down to the end of the hand. So just something to consider as you're doing the zenithal priming on an action figure is kind of like the piece that you're doing it on, what's it going to look like when it's done. So like the shoes, I mean, that's pretty easy. I mean, his feet are probably going to be flat on the ground, so you're going to zenithal prime it from the top down. But other things, if he's going to have his arms in the air, or he's going to be doing something different, you may want to have it otherwise. So like let's say that he was throwing an uppercut. Well, then like the underside of his knuckles, like if it's coming up, that's where you would want the white for the primer. So it just kind of depends. Here it's mostly just top down, other than the hands where I do it kind of from the the back side of the hand down. So, but yep. And then here, just now I'm rinsing. I had just done the white, and so now I'm rinsing out my airbrush. And the way that I do this is I keep one of these kind of water bottles, like medical water bottles, and I just put some water in there, and then I'll dump it in this cup here that I got from my weight loss surgery last year. So I'm supposed to be using that, I think, for like protein drinks and stuff. But yeah, if you're watching this, sorry, Doc. It's used for airbrush. So I just keep filling it up, dumping it until I get to the point where, and then I'll run some through. Once I get to the point where I feel like it's mostly clean, I'll use this little spritz bottle that I have that's got some cleaner in it and stuff. And then I'll just run that through there and just keep going until I get this all the way clean. So it's kind of like pour water in, dump it out, pour water in, dump it out, pour water in, bubble it up, dump it out, and then I got this is the spritz bottle I was talking about here. So, this is like 3/4 cleaner, Vallejo cleaner, and then 1/4 of the flow improver in that spritz bottle. And I'll spray that in there and bubble it up, pour it out, spray it in there again, run it through, and like actually spray it into this cup. And then when I got to the point where I feel like all of the paint is gone and it's clean, then I'll just run some more water through here and make sure I don't have cleaner left in the airbrush, because I don't want that mixing with my paints or just sitting around getting stuck in the airbrush. So that's kind of my process during airbrushing, like from switching from one paint to another, just to keep it as clean as I can throughout. And then when I'm done airbrushing for the day, then I take it all apart and go from there. So here I'm switching to a gray. So I've done my black base primer, I've done my zenithal priming, and now I'm switching to a gray to kind of go over the whole figure. But the gray primer that I have isn't as dark as I wanted for this, so I also added a little black on here. But I'm just trying to get the mixture right here. And when I put in, like when I'm mixing two colors, I keep these little sticks nearby that I'll just kind of mix that with. And then once again, test it on a paper towel and make sure it looks the way that I want it to. So this is me kind of stirring that up with the stick. And then once I've stirred that up pretty good inside the cup, then I'll also, just bubble it up again, make sure it's mixed really well, and then I'll test that. So here's me bubbling it up. When I say bubbling up, I'm pushing down. Well, first of all, I got my finger on the end of the airbrush, and I'm pushing down for air, and then I'm starting to pull it back. And that's shooting air through there, and it's trying to shoot paint, but because I got my finger over the edge, it's not going to shoot paint out, which means that it starts bubbling it up in the cup and mixing those colors together. So that gray that I put in there, that black that I put in there, it's mixing that all together. So then once I've gotten that to the color that I want, now I'm just going to go over the entire figure. So remember, I went black over everything. I went white at a downward angle for where the light's going to hit. And now I'm just kind of covering the whole thing in this, darker gray. So by doing that, the areas that were kind of still black from the original prime are going to be a little bit darker gray. And the areas that I did the white zenithal on are going to be a little bit lighter gray. So I'm starting to get kind of that little bit of tone difference or shade difference in the highlighted areas versus the shadow areas. And then from there, I'm going to do a black wash, which you won't actually see on this, but I did a video on kind of how I made that black wash myself with some, different color apple barrel paints and some a little bit of dish soap and water. Mix that up. So what you're seeing here is after I've finished the airbrushing on the whole thing. I've also finished the black wash, and now we've got kind of our base, what we want this to look like, and now it's a matter of starting to do our dry brushing. So I've got several different brushes here, but I grabbed a bunch of different dry brushes. I got these testers ones that come in a 3-pack. It's like a number 2, a number 8, and a 10. And then I've got a lot of makeup elf brushes, some bigger ones, some smaller, tiny detail ones, just based on kind of what areas I'm brushing. So like around some of the areas on the head and stuff, I need a smaller brush. And then for the bigger part of the figure, I'll need the bigger ones. So a couple of the paints that I'm using, I got the So Flat, a couple different grays. I've got a white. I've got a black, obviously, in case I need to darken anything up. I ended up grabbing this permanent green for the shorts, and then also this orc flesh for the shade on the shorts, and then just some Nuln Oil in case I need to go over it in certain parts. As I was doing the dry brushing on the head, there were certain parts where I had to go back and hit it with a little bit of that Nuln Oil. And then just a couple different kind of metallics, Iron Breaker, Iron Warriors, and then Stormhost Silver that I'll use on all the kind of metal band areas. So there's a couple around the lower part of the legs. I guess like the bottom of the shorts. There's the part for the belt, and then 2 bands that go around the boots. So I pull up this picture here. This is kind of that statue which I was using as kind of my inspiration, I guess, because I was basically trying to take this. I guess it's like a $50 set with the Doomsday and Superman. So the Doomsday itself is probably like $30. So like this $30 McFarlane Doomsday figure, and make it look more like this $1,700 statue without paying $1,700. So I'm just kind of looking at it for inspiration and seeing like where they have areas that are, dark and light. There's that $1,700 price tag. And kind of using that as my inspiration. And, it's like source material, like anything that you're doing like this. Like if you're, let's say you're painting a wolf head, right? Go and look up a bunch of wolf heads and see what they look like and see what different colors they have. If you're doing a tribute figure, pull up a bunch of pictures of that tribute, whether it's from a cartoon or from a comic book or whatever the media is that it came from that inspired you to do that tribute. Source material is good. It helps you kind of inspire you and pick your colors and make sure that it comes out the way that you want it to. So here I've started with the N5 gray, and what I'm going to do is with this I'm going to do a dry brush over pretty much most of the figure. So I'm using a bigger brush, and I'm going to hit pretty much everything because I've now gone over it with that black wash and darkened everything up, and I'm trying to start bring out the highlight details on the whole figure. And then from there, I'll go with a lighter gray and start hitting the rock kind of formations that come out of him, like from around his hands and face and all this and that. And then I'll go from that lighter gray to an even lighter gray by adding some white. And then at the very end, I'll go with an actual white over it on those rock areas. But here, like I said, I'm just trying to get, big coverage. So I'm, just brushing over the whole thing. In some areas, I may do like a circular motion. Other areas, I may just kind of do it at a downward angle. It really depends on where I think light's going to catch it. But I am trying to do kind of full coverage here. Because that dark wash brought it really black, like really hit those creviced areas. And now I'm trying to, like the texture of the skin and rocks and everything, I'm just starting to try to bring all that out. So, and then this, there's going to be just a lot of dry brushing here. In fact, most of this video, the rest of this video is going to be on the dry brushing. So, not sure how exciting it's going to be, but that's really what's going on here. So just hitting all these areas. You can see like there's certain, it's starting to pop. Like you're starting to see a little bit of a difference in, where the areas are darker and where the areas are lighter starting to come out. And then there I'm using my dry brush palette, try to make sure that I've got enough off of there, and then I'll test on the back of my hand, and then continue to hit up this figure. So at this part, I'm just working on the one side of the figure to try to illustrate the difference from one side to the other. But as I switch to the back, I start now just covering the whole torso here, just going over all of it. But it's interesting, this is the part where I think McFarlane kind of lacks sometimes is on these paint apps, because the sculptural detail is there, but you can see, as you're, hitting this with a dry brushing, all of those details pop that you didn't notice before. So, two things on this. One, it's kind of, in my opinion, doing the figure justice by doing it a repaint like this, because you get to, make it look the way that I think the sculptor intended. But the other thing is that as a painter and appreciation of, somebody that appreciates these figures and characters, you get to really catch all these details that you might have missed before. So like there's some details in here that I've owned this figure for, I don't know, 6-7 months. And there's details in here that I didn't even know were there until you start hitting it with a dry brush and you're like, oh, wow, like they really did a good job there. So the other thing is that they try to get a good amount of use out of this tooling. And so, they'll repaint it a couple different ways and stuff. Like one of the main things on this one that bugged me was it's got this like tattered cloth around his arms, and they did not paint that in. So it's like just the same color as the rest of his skin tone, and that bugged the crap out of me. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Doomsday story, he's basically from Krypton, and he was sent away a long time ago, and he landed on Earth, but he was like in this capsule, and he was wrapped up in this kind of like greenish garb that was covering him from head to toe, so you couldn't see kind of what it looked like underneath. And as he broke free, he started, fighting against the Justice League and then eventually Superman, which led to the death of Superman. And as he fought, he kind of tore through that green outfit because of all these like rock formations that were, on him. And that tore through the green outfit and started coming out. So what's left on the arms, they sculpted like this, kind of tattered sleeve that was left after he kind of ripped through it. But then they didn't paint it. So it just looked like the rest of his rock body. And then there's a couple other Doomsdays that they've come out with. One that they did paint that, and then several others where they didn't. So, just choices. But I think that a lot of their figures are sculpted really nicely. It just needs a better paint job. So, and that's what I'm trying to do here. So just once again, still going over the whole thing with this N5 gray, and this is a So Flat color. I think I might have mentioned that, but this is a So Flat made by Golden. I really love the So Flat paints. They've got really good coverage, and just the finish on it is really nice. The finish, I mean, it says So Flat, like that's how it comes out. It's a very matte, flat finish. And I really dig it. So, especially when you hit it with the Mr. Super Clear, because it had Mr. Super Clear, although it is flat, it does have just a very slight sheen to it. And that sheen mixed with the So Flat paints comes out with this really factory looking finish that I love. So those two working together are really nice. But here I'm just loading up my brush again, making sure I got the right amount, and I'm starting to hit that entire head because I'm focused on the skin here. The rocks, I'm going to continue, like the rock formations, I'm going to continue to make lighter and lighter colors. So I'm not as worried about that on here because I'm going to do multiple levels of dry brushing on those rock formations. But I want to make sure that I get that skin color the way that I want it to. So I'm hitting all that. I'm going to hit the hair here. I'm going to hit the rock formations, hit the skin. But the hair and the rock formations, I'm going to continue to hit with lighter and lighter colors as I go. Because he basically has like white hair, and the rock formations get lighter as it gets towards, kind of the areas that sun would hit more. So yeah, just going through all that here. And then, like I said, I do have that Nuln Oil nearby. So if I have any areas that I feel like get a little too light, I could always hit it with that. I think there was only just like 2 tiny spots as I got towards the end. I think when I got to the white dry brush, that got a little white on the skin that I didn't want, and I had to darken it up just a tiny bit with the Nuln Oil. But yeah, just continuing to dry brush. So it's Dry Brush City. So this is going to be a lot of just dry brushing. So I think it might be time for a little thing that we like to call fast motion. Here we go. So as we go through this fast motion, it's just me continuing to dry brush. So I'm hitting up a few of these pieces. That was me finishing the head. Now I'm starting to work on this. This is like the shoulder circle thing. I don't know what they call this. It's like it kind of where the arm plugs into the torso. It's got this like ring that helps that transition. So hitting up the arms, just doing a few more pieces with the, kind of overall with the N5. Just getting that full dry brush over the whole thing. This is the part that has that tattered sleeves. Not necessarily worried about that part of it. I'm going to touch that up with the green as I move forward. So I'm still, just hitting all of this area with the green, and any of the detail spots I'll catch as I, get to that section. So, and, now working on the hands, but same thing, just dry brush, full coverage on the N5. On this section too, like you can see that it's got the ring on there, that metal ring, and then the pants. I'll get to those as I, move into those sections. So right here, I'm just mostly worried about the skin and the rocks, but yeah, if I go over the other areas, it's not the end of the world. So now on this part here, you can see I've already done, I've pulled out the N8 so flat, and I've started to do some dry brushing with that, which lightened these, the rock formations you see on the arms there up. And I've added some white into there to, even make that a little lighter. And I'm just doing gradual, levels of dry brushing. So start with the N5 darker gray, then go to the N8 lighter gray, then go to an N8 with white, and then eventually just a white. So it's just, getting lighter and lighter as we go forward. And you can see, all of that starting to come out now. So these are the details in the rock that separates it from the rest of the torso and the rest of the body, that we didn't get initially in this figure. So, and, there's certain areas on here, like this one I'm using a little bit smaller dry brushing, a little smaller makeup brush to hit these tiny parts of the rock formations, because I don't want that going over the skin. The skin is at this point the way that I want it to be. I don't want anything to change on that. So I'm just hitting these like little tiny rocks like underneath the ab crunch, or right above the ab crunch, I guess I should say, and that kind of thing. As I hit the bigger rock formations, like on the shoulder and things like that, I can use a bigger dry brush. But for these tiny ones, I use the little one. And yeah, so that's basically what's going on here. It's just, as we go through lighter and lighter colors of the dry brushing. Now with, something different, this is all like grays and whites on this figure. But if this was, the example we used was like a wolf earlier. So like, let's say that you're doing a wolf, and the reference pictures that you have, you look at it and you go, man, it's got some browns and some yellows and some whites and some grays. Like there's a bunch of different colors there. You just got to choose like which order that you're doing those in, and have those as you go up. Make sure you know which areas you're going to hit in what order to make sure that all of that pops the way that you want it to. And you also want to make sure that like the next level of dry brushing that you do is a little bit less paint and a little bit lighter touch, so that you still get some of that underneath dry brushing, but now the dry brushing that you did on top is kind of hitting that top area. So it's like, the initial dry brush is hitting the raised areas, right? And then the second dry brush that you're doing is hitting the even more raised areas of those raised areas. And then the next level dry brushing is hitting like the top areas of those raised areas of the other raised areas. And then the last dry brushing is hitting the tippy top, right? So it's just a light touch as you go up in levels of dry brushing, so that you still get a hint of the previous layers, but you also get, that really highlight at the very top. So I don't know, that might not be the best way to describe it, but that's the best way that I can say it in my way. Is just, as you do extra, the more layers you do, the lighter touch that you get. So on the head here, you can see there's like really, really tiny details as far as the rock formation goes. And that's where, I'm hitting it with this really tiny makeup brush. And there's still, even with that, even with the tiny makeup brush, there's still some spots that I kind of get it on the skin tone where I don't want it, and that's where I have to use that Nuln Oil later. But I'm also hitting the hairline, so there's a little bit of hair coming out of the sculpt that then goes into like a hair tie or some sort of something that's got a ponytail for them, and then it goes into the rest of the hair. So that initial hair coming from the scalp into the hair tie. It's really tiny details, so you got to be careful as you're doing that not to cover up that skin tone that you just did. So as far as the hair tie itself, I'm going to paint over that anyway, so that I'm not necessarily worried about. But and yeah, then it's just more dry brushing over the whole figure and covering it up. I'm still working on the N8 So Flat Gray mixed with some white. And then, like I said, the last layer will just be white. So I think maybe time for another fast motion. All right, at this point, we're doing some more fast motion, and I was finishing up this head, and then pull out the blue tack on those eyes. Got a little bit in some crevices. With blue tack, if you've got some in an area that you can't get out, you typically just use some more, dab it, and that'll usually pull that right off. So, and then continue on with the rest of the dry brushing of the rock formations. I'm using the white at this point, so you can't see it. It's just off screen at the top of my wet palette. And I'm doing it very gently, just getting those, what we call the tippy top areas, and helping to bring out the rest of the details here. So, this is pretty much towards the end of the dry brushing there. You can see the difference, on this piece that I'm holding, as well as those ones on the table, from the darker skin tone to the lighter, kind of rock formations. So, and then after this, I'll start working on the green for the shorts and the other parts there. So, and then, this is a little bit backwards because I finished this during a live last week, but now you're seeing the beginning parts this week, because I had recorded some stuff before I decided to go live last week. And then during the live, people said that they would have liked to see some of this stuff as well. So, hopefully this is beneficial, but it is a little backwards. So this is the start of this figure, and then if you want to see the end of the figure, you'll have to actually go back a week and look at last week, what's on your desk, to see the kind of finishing touches. But I will show before and after at the very end of this, so you can kind of see how it all came together. So before I started painting the green on this, I noticed that I had some dust and maybe even some paint on my magnifier, my magnifying light. So here, this is just a lens cleaner. You can get it for your glasses. I think I got these at maybe like Dollar General or something. It was just a big box of like 100 of them for not much. And so I'm just, wiping the top of the magnifier as well as the bottom, Just getting it nice and clear, because some of this, for the green here, I'm actually going to do under the magnifier, and hopefully that helps you guys see it just a little bit better, as well as myself, while I was painting the details here. So just a good clean with the lens cleaner. And then I'm getting ready to start to the green. Now I only get a little bit of green on here before I realize that belt actually can come off. So I stop and then, start working on that belt, which would have been nice to do, to take it off before I even primed it and all that. But here's where I catch it and I go, oh, that's a separate piece. And it just has a very little bit of like they tacked it, like just did a couple dots of glue around a couple of the points. So it pulls off very easily. So I just kind of pull it off here, and there is a bit of, some paint that comes off as well. But it's not really the paint that I was putting on it. It was paint from the original figure, like, I guess when they applied the green. So there's some green that's attached to the belt itself as I pull it off. So it's working through. There were a couple little pegs that go into like holes along the shorts. I want to say there was like 4 of them, as well as, like I said, a couple dots of glue. So I just kind of pull that up a little bit, and then eventually I can pull it right off. So just kind of working at that, working it around the belt, and there we go. So that's part of the ones that'll be metallic later on. I don't think I show the metallic in this one, but I do from last week. I basically just do, it's a black base, and then I do a couple layers of, I think it's the Iron Warrior and then Iron Breakers, whichever one's the darker silver and then the lighter, and then hit it with a Runefang steel, and then a little gloss Nuln Oil to bring out that kind of shininess of the metal, and then another little dry brush of metallic afterwards just to finish it off. So, and then here I'm just going in and scraping some of the excess paint from the initial, like from McFarlane themselves. I'm just scraping any of that because it was kind of flaky, and what I didn't want is to, put my new paint on it and have, as I put the belt back on, to have the original flake off and have my stuff on top of it also come off with it. So just kind of scraping off some of the excess here before going through and painting the rest. So that's what's going on here. I just got my X-Acto knife and just kind of working that off. So whenever you're using X-Acto knife, you want to make sure that you've got a very sharp blade. If it starts getting dull, you can get replacement blades very cheap. They sell them in packs of like 5 or 10. And you just want to switch it out, because anytime that you've got a dull blade, not only is it harder to work with, but there's more of a chance of something getting caught up and sticking yourself. So the sharper the blade, the easier it is for you to kind of be precise with it. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just working through here, trimming all this off. Some of it was really flaky, and some of it was like I could see that there were edges pulled up, but it was still attached in the middle. And so I would just kind of work until that came off the way that I wanted it to. And in addition to the, kind of paint that was flaking off, there's also a few spots where that kind of glue was tacked on there. And so I'm just trying to make sure I got all that off of there as well. I just want to make sure that when I get this part painted and get the belt, painted and ready to go back on there, that I don't have any spots that are like sticking up or not connecting. It just makes it easier for me to put it back together if I don't have to worry about these extra pieces of glue or paint or whatever. So I got all that off the shorts, and now I'm just doing the same thing on the belt. I'm just going underneath, and you can see like this belt was like a gray belt on it. I'm going to make it more metallic. But on this gray belt on the inside, you can see a lot of green there. And some of the green is, it's actually part of it. And some of the green is just like paint on top. So, if it's super attached and it's not, I don't feel like it's going to come off, then I'm not worried about it. But if it looks like, there's a chance that it's going to peel off, like I said, the last thing I want is for it to peel off with my paint on top of it, because now all you're going to see is the actual plastic underneath. So just continue to go over this area. And if this was on the outside, like if this was a part that was going to show, I would probably sand it down once it's done. But this is all on the inside of the belt and on the outside of the shorts where the belt is going to go. So none of this is going to be seen once I put the belt on there and glue it back into place. I could just scrape it off and go. So now that I've got that off and I've, no extra paint or glue or whatever, now I can start working on the shorts. And once again, this is a So Flat Permanent Green is the color that I'm using. And I'm just applying this first over all of these cloth areas. So that'll be the shorts, the upper part of the legs that come down from the shorts, the boots themselves, and then we've got those cloth parts around the arms that we mentioned, like the tethered cloth, which is more of a detailed color. So Flat Permanent Green. Then I hit it with it's a contrast paint called Orc Flesh, I think, or Orc something. It'll come up here in a little bit. But then, and then I hit it with a dry brush of this same permanent green afterwards, just to bring those highlight areas back. So, and all of that, as far as the contrast and the dry brushing, actually occurred in the live that I did last week. So if you want to see all that, to bring this to a finish, you'd have to tune back in and see that. But, as I said earlier, I'll show a before and after at the end of this. And I think I'll probably just throw it in the thumbnail as well. So you probably saw it when you clicked on this. Because I was really happy with how this came out. A lot of times when I'm painting something myself, like, you hear you're your own worst critic kind of thing. So there's a lot of times where I'm like, it came out all right, but could have been better or whatever. I don't think of myself as any sort of great artist or anything like that. I'm very meticulous, and I stay on something until it's the way that I want it to be. And I guess I stubborn it into existence. But with this one here, I was really pleased with how it came out. I really was happy with the finished product. Anytime that you're doing a full repaint, especially if it's a character that's supposed to look a certain way, it's kind of nerve-wracking because you don't want to take this figure that you spent money on and ruin it. You think you can do better, you hope you can do better, but you really don't know until it's done. But with this one, I was really happy with the finished product. So what you're seeing here is just more painting that green. I'll probably go into some fast motion here in a second because it's just going to be a bunch of lines until we get to the parts on the arms. That's more detailed. So let's do some fast motion. All right, so we're now in fast motion, applying some green and really just getting a base coat down. So nothing too fancy here. I'm using a number 2 brush and just, really trying to get that whole area covered. I did the bottom part of the shorts and then set it to the side to dry so that I can then grab it by like the crotch part of it, I guess, and then get the top part of that shorts, because there's a like torn part of the upper shorts that overhang that belt, and I need something to grab onto in order to paint that part. So I just put it aside to let that dry, and then I work on the other parts of this. So yeah, doing that now and just kind of working on these upper legs and continuing on to the boots and the kind of lower part of the legs that kind of connect to the boots there, the little calf parts. And, this is kind of interesting because I had filmed all this, whatever that was, early last week. So about a week and a half ago now. And then I'm trying to splice it together, do some fast motion, talking over it. So I'm not sure how this is going to end up coming out. This is maybe really good. It may be really rough. I'm not sure. But like I said, when I finished that last week, some folks wanted to see some of the parts before I went live. So that's what this is. So this part right now is not super interesting. It's just, working through those green parts. But, we're almost done with this part, and then we will go into the more intricate details on the cloth on the upper arms. So here I try to put this under the magnifying glass so you guys can see this a little better. This is really why I cleaned it up earlier, was so that I could use it for this portion. So you can see here on these arms, like there's the green is, it's just like this torn cloth. So, the way that this was originally was it was just all gray. And as I've painted this, I've kind of just based it all in that like skin tone gray. And now I've got to go through and make sure that I'm hitting the spots that are supposed to be cloth and making sure that I'm making them that green color. And it can be difficult sometimes when you're looking at something and it's all one color, trying to determine like what parts are supposed to be what. Like what did the sculptor have in mind as he was sculpting this? Like if there's let's say kind of a strand there, like is that strand part of like the veiny, muscly tenu, like, whatever the is it part of the skin or is it part of the cloth? Like what is that sculpt there? And she's got to take a close look and try to figure that out. Make sure that you understand kind of what is going on there. And then as you start hitting it with paint, then it really starts to pop and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that, I can definitely see the cloth now, as you start putting some detail on there. And it's one of those things where it's like the sculptor did a great job, like put all this work into here to like make this portion of it that makes it a lot more, in my opinion, like comic accurate, having this stuff on here. And then when you just paint it one color like they did on the final figure, I don't know, it makes me sad. It's like, man, we put all this work into it and then somebody just threw the same color on there. But sometimes the other thing is that you don't really notice a lot of those details until you start painting it. Like an example that I use, there's a Wolf King set that just came out this year at Legion's Con. It's the Joe Gonzalez set that has these pauldrons that I started painting, and it wasn't until I started applying some dry brush that I realized that the bottom of those pauldrons have like a row of skulls across the bottom. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even see that there. So, a little bit of paint on this stuff really will help it to stand out. And I think, it's a very symbiotic relationship between a sculptor and a painter. A good sculpt can make a painter look even better because that sculpt will catch, certain details as you're painting. And then the same thing on the other side. Like if you're a good painter, you can really make the sculptor look good by catching those things. So Here I just got a little bit of green on the skin tone that I didn't want it to be there. So I just quickly just get like a little tissue, get some water on it, and kind of rub some of that off. And then I've got these little cotton swabs that I use, especially if it's in like tiny spots or whatever, that I can kind of rub over that area and get that paint off while it's still wet. In this section here, it like kind of went into a crevice that I didn't want, so I used my X-Acto knife with the tissue to try to get it. In worst case scenario, you can always try to repaint that as long as you remember the kind of the colors that you use. So like if it didn't come off, I could always take it back down to the base, So Flat N5 gray and kind of work my way up, or just hit it. If it's just very light, maybe I could just hit it with the top layer, of the dry brushing that I did there. But I'm pretty quick on this here, and I get, that green off that I was looking for, and, get it back to that skin tone. So it's not a big deal. And then now I'm back on it and getting ready to work on the other side. So get my magnifying glass in place and just continue working on here. So he's got these really interesting arms to where he has he's got this rock textured skin. He's got these like veiny muscles and stuff. And so, you just gotta, as you're going through here, go, okay, which part of this is rock, which part of this is vein, which part of this is the cloth. And then just make sure that you're hitting the right areas. So that's what I'm doing in this section here. And then if you watch the live from last week, then once I'm done with this, once I've painted this green on here, you still want the shadows and the highlights. And the way that I get that with this is I will, put a contrast on here to get in those recess areas and get that dark part. And then, typically what I would do then is I would, dry brush on top of the contrast to bring those highlights out and kind of just pull it all together. Well, because this area has got so much of the really tiny green details surrounded by the gray rock details, makes it more difficult to dry brush this area, because you're trying not to cover the gray skin that you just did. But I just use a really tiny e.l.f. makeup brush and kind of lightly, very, very lightly, dry brush over those areas. And then in some spots, I can even, go in with the brush and just a little tiny bit of paint, and just very, very lightly touch up some of the highest areas. But that's all, like I said, included in last week's live stream if you want to see that. But here I'm just finishing this up and, getting ready to kind of finish this section for today. And then it then, like I said, picks up at the live that I did last week for the What's on Your Desk. So, if you check that out, I'll probably put the link to last week's in the description here, so that if you want to go back and look at that, you can. Because that's kind of where it all finishes. But, for anybody that's, watching most of my content, if you're catching all of it, then you're kind of watching it backwards. But if you're seeing this one first, then hey, awesome. But yeah, you'll want to go back to episode 4 to see the finish, whereas this is episode 5 of What's on Your Desk. So I guess you could say I Tarantino'd it a bit. So there you go. If you like a little Pulp Fiction kind of action, you're getting the end first, and then we're going back and doing the beginning. So, but just like I said, continuing to work on those tiny details here, and then once that's done, then I would go to the next part. And this is actually like most of this after the airbrushing was done at my station that I have downstairs. So that was the other reason why I'm doing the voiceover on this, because I was actually doing this during, I think, wrestling at this time. Me and my daughter were watching wrestling and I was painting. So this is downstairs. So when I paint downstairs, I just have like one of those foldable TV trays, and it's got another, mag light on here, like this one that I'm using, just like the one that I have upstairs. I've got another wet palette downstairs and a Citadel water pot. So really the only thing I'm bringing back and forth is my brushes and my paints that I'm going to use. So yeah, that's what's going on here. And we're just about finished. So it looks like that's kind of putting on those final little touches, making sure I didn't miss any areas. And yeah. So this is the finish on that with the cloth parts. And then we'll go into the final. All right. So once all was said and done, this is kind of how it finished off. And I was really happy with this. I love this character. Love the whole storyline, the death and return of Superman. I thought it was a cool way to introduce a character where he was kind of there the whole time and breaks free from his, shackles and stuff that he had on him, and has to fight through the Justice League, and it takes everything out of Superman to take him down. But in the process, it, also takes Superman out. So, this is one that I've wanted to have in my collection. And, I don't know if I would say this came out to be like a $1,700 statue figure, but it definitely looks a lot better than what it did as that, basic figure that it came from McFarlane. So looking at the comparison of before and after. So before, starting at the bottom, the feet, the soles were not painted a different color. It was just the boots were just completely green. So the band at the top, which should be more like a metallic, and then the, kind of the soles, which are more of like a metallic look as well. None of those were painted. It was just all sculpted in a solid green color. There was no paint at all. It was just sculpted in green, and that's the way it stayed. So that's all changed on the other figure. The one the after, you can see I've got all those details that are painted in. Moving to the shorts, you've got the metal bands at the bottom, the belt at the top that are now showing as a metallic color instead of just sculpted in a gray material with zero paint on them. And then even the shorts, like all the cloth parts now, it has more shade and highlights to it because of the contrast and dry brushing. So I feel like all the cloth areas really pop a lot more. And then painting those tattered cloth around the arms really shows up now. And as opposed to on the left there, you see the sculpted part is there, but it was just all that solid color. And then really, I think the thing that I'm most impressed with is just the skin tone and the like crystallized formations coming out of him. The skin itself is more of that really dark gray with the lighter rock formations coming off of him that looks quite a bit different in terms of like the skin versus the rocks, as opposed to originally there was a dry brush there, but it was so slightly different from the original color that it was really hard to tell. So I just think he looks more menacing now. He looks cooler, and I feel like it brought out more of the details of that sculpt. So hope that you guys liked this. Yeah, man, I tell you what, taking footage from a week and a half back and trying to splice it together and do a voiceover was not easy. So hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. If I'm being honest, you'll probably get more of the lives on the What's on My Desk Wednesday, just because it was easier for me to set up, do it live, answer some questions. It was very interactive. I thought it was a lot of fun. But this week I'm actually doing a lot of traveling, so it worked out. I had some extra time in the hotel and figured I would take this footage that already existed out there and throw it together. So
If you like this, let me know. Throw out a like and a comment. If you didn't like it, you thought this was absolutely terrible and I should just stop what I'm doing, let me know that too. Because any comments help. I will respond to everybody. I try to respond to every single comment. I think I've done pretty good so far. But throw a comment or question out there and I will do my best to respond to it. If you've got a figure that you see, you pick it up from, a retailer, pick it up from Target or Walmart or whatever, and you go, man, this looks really good, but I think it could have just been a little bit better. Don't be afraid to try your hand at, doing it yourself and seeing what you can do with it. And if you need anything, you have any questions, throw them out to me. I'll do my best to help you out. But have fun with these things. And until next time, folks, keep creating.